Some walked down the aisle before enormous crowds, while others married almost in secret. One was only 16 years old, and one of these brides wore a gown created over several months by an entire MGM team. But first place belongs to a creation that, even today, seems impossible to surpass. Welcome to Gisela'sStyleRoyal. Today, we will discover the 10 most beautiful wedding dresses worn by the greatest legends of cinema at their real-life weddings. Before we begin, subscribe to Gisela'sStyleRoyal and stay with us until the very end because the dresses on the podium are truly extraordinary. Number 10. Audrey Hepburn. In 1954, at just 25 years old, Audrey Hepburn walked down the aisle in Bergenstock, Switzerland, to marry actor and director Mel Ferrer. She chose a Pierre Balmain design that was completely different from the grand, princess-style gowns of the era. Its tea-length skirt, falling to mid-calf, abandoned the traditional train and helped popularize a lighter, more youthful and modern bridal silhouette. The airy skirt moved gently, while the puffed sleeves and high neckline added a delicate, romantic touch. A satin bow defined her tiny waist. Audrey did not wear a majestic veil either. Instead, she adorned her short hair with a crown of white flowers and held a small missal in her hands, an intimate gesture that another bride on this list would repeat almost 2 years later. The ceremony was discreet, surrounded by the Swiss mountains and carefully shielded from the press. Some accounts suggest that only 25 people attended. It may not have been the most luxurious gown in the ranking, but it was certainly one of the truest expressions of Audrey's style. Simple, elegant, and unforgettable. And the next bride was not yet Marilyn Monroe, but a teenage girl named Norma Jean. Number 9. Marilyn Monroe. In 1942, long before she became Hollywood's golden legend, Marilyn Monroe was still a 16-year-old teenager named Norma Jean Baker. When the family caring for her had to move away, Norma Jean faced the possibility of returning to foster care. Amid that uncertainty, she married her neighbor, James Doherty, just weeks after turning 16. He would later say that although the marriage began as a practical solution, they were both in love. For the ceremony, she wore a simple, borrowed white gown, very much in the style of the 1940s. It featured a long A-line silhouette, sheer sleeves, slightly structured shoulders, and delicate ruffles around the neckline. She wore a short veil and carried a bouquet of white roses. In those photographs, the dazzling blonde Marilyn everyone remembers had not yet appeared. Her marriage lasted 4 years. When James returned from serving overseas, Norma Jean had already begun working as a model. The gown was not luxurious, but it preserved the image of the young woman who existed before the legend. And the next bride seemed to be living the perfect Hollywood marriage, until one of her friends changed the ending of that story forever. Number 8. Debbie Reynolds. In 8th place, we travel back to 1955. At the time, Debbie Reynolds seemed to be living in her own romantic comedy. At just 23 years old, the star of Singin' in the Rain was joining her life with that of celebrated singer Eddie Fisher. The press crowned them America's sweethearts, young, talented, and seemingly perfect. For that special day, Debbie trusted the genius of Helen Rose, MGM's favorite costume designer. The gown was an ode to mid-century femininity, crafted from delicate, intricate lace, with a fitted bodice that enhanced her figure and a full skirt that fell with an almost ethereal softness. A subtle veil framed her face, completing an image that was sweet, radiant, and absolutely iconic of Hollywood's golden age. For a time, Debbie and Eddie were considered the perfect Hollywood couple, but just a few years later, that image collapsed. Eddie began a relationship with Elizabeth Taylor, one of Debbie's close friends. After the divorce, he married Elizabeth in 1959, creating one of the most talked-about love triangles in Hollywood history. Now we travel back to 1932, when another future legend was still an unknown young woman named Vivian Hartley. Number 7. Vivien Leigh. In 1932, long before captivating the world as Scarlett O'Hara, Vivian Lee was still Vivian Hartley, a 19-year-old young woman who dreamed of becoming an actress. On December 20th, she married barrister Herbert Lee Holman at St. James's Church, Spanish Place in London. The ceremony was brief and simple, far removed from the spectacle that would one day surround the great star. For the occasion, she wore a romantic white satin gown, with a long, graceful silhouette and delicately adorned sleeves. A wide, transparent veil flowed all the way to the floor from an original close-fitting cap, woven with tiny pearls and decorated with ivory-colored flowers. Soon afterward, her only daughter Suzanne was born. But Vivian did not abandon her dream of acting. From that first marriage, she kept something that would eventually become part of cinema history: the surname Lee. The young bride could not yet imagine that only 7 years later, she would become one of the most famous women in the world. But while Vivian's wedding was intimate and simple, the next bride would celebrate her special day surrounded by stars, wearing a gown worthy of a Hollywood princess. Number 6. Pier Angeli. In November of 1954, Italian actress Pier Angeli looked like a true princess from Hollywood's golden age as she married singer and actor Vic Damone. For that special day, the young Italian actress chose a creation by Helen Rose, MGM's celebrated costume designer. The gown featured a fitted bodice, a high neckline, and delicate sheer long sleeves. From the waist, the skirt opened into a magnificent fullness, falling in light, graceful layers that created a soft and deeply romantic silhouette. A long, transparent veil framed her face and flowed all the way to the floor, held in place by a small Juliet cap-inspired headdress. Pierre completed the look with an abundant bouquet of white flowers, enhancing her youthful, almost princess-like beauty. The ceremony was held at St. Timothy's Catholic Church in Los Angeles. The wedding brought together stars such as Debbie Reynolds, Jack Benny, and Dean Martin, becoming one of the great social events of that year. And wait just a moment. If you enjoy these stories of elegance and classic Hollywood, follow me on Instagram and Facebook as well. Scan the QR code on the screen or find the links in the description. Number 5. Julie Andrews. In 1959, long before becoming the unforgettable Mary Poppins, Julie Andrews married Tony Walton, the young designer she had known since childhood. The ceremony took place on May 10th at St. Mary's Church in Oatlands, England. Although Julie had dreamed of an intimate wedding, hundreds of admirers gathered along the road leading to the church, and nearly 300 guests witnessed the ceremony. But the most special detail was her wedding gown. Tony designed it personally for her. The gown featured a fitted bodice, a high neckline, and delicate sheer long sleeves. Romantic floral appliques adorned the upper part, while a light layer of translucent fabric softened the silhouette. Her simple, airy veil framed her face without concealing it, and a small bouquet completed the youthful and elegant image. Tony also designed their wedding rings, inspired by a laurel wreath, ensuring that every detail of the wedding carried a piece of their own love story. The gown needed no spectacular jewels. Its true luxury was that it had been created by the man waiting for her at the altar. And the next bride would be transformed by Helen Rose into the perfect image of a young MGM star. Number 4. Jane Powell. In 1949, Jane Powell was one of MGM's most charming young stars. At just 20 years old, she married Gary Stephan, a professional figure skater and performing partner of the celebrated Sonja Henie. The ceremony took place on November 5th at the Church of the Good Shepherd in Beverly Hills. For that special day, Helen Rose created a satin gown with a fitted waist and a full sweeping skirt. The upper part was covered by a delicate lace jacket, featuring a high neckline and long sleeves. The skirt was decorated with horizontal bands and an elegant cascade of bows, adding a youthful and theatrical touch that felt unmistakably MGM. A long veil secured close to her face completed the romantic and radiant image. Jane looked as though she had stepped directly out of one of her own musicals. Among those who came to congratulate the couple was a very young Elizabeth Taylor, who will also appear later in this ranking. Number 3. Linda Christian. In 1949, Rome ceased to be only the Eternal City and became the setting for one of the most talked-about weddings in cinema history. Linda Christian married Tyrone Power at the Church of Santa Francesca Romana before a vast crowd that had gathered to witness one of the most famous couples in film. For that extraordinary day, the Fontana sisters created a majestic white satin gown that followed Linda's figure with delicate precision. The high neckline and long sleeves gave the design a solemn elegance, while the skirt extended into an extraordinary train that, according to contemporary reports, measured more than 7 meters in length. The long veil fell over the train, creating an almost regal image. Linda seemed to be walking not only toward the altar, but toward one of the defining moments of Italian fashion. The wedding became known as the marriage of the century, and its photographs traveled around the world. The impact was enormous. The Micol Fontana Foundation itself considers this gown its most celebrated bridal creation. And if you thought no wedding could surpass that Roman spectacle, wait until you see the two creations that dominate our podium. Number 2. Elizabeth Taylor. In 1950, Elizabeth Taylor was only 18 years old when she became the bride in a wedding worthy of Hollywood's most lavish production. To marry Conrad Nicky Hilton Jr., heir to the hotel empire, MGM decided to transform her into the perfect bride. The studio gave her an extraordinary gown, designed by Helen Rose. Created from more than 22 meters of shell-colored satin, it featured a sweetheart neckline that rested slightly off the shoulders, covered by delicate illusion netting that rose gracefully to the neck. At just 18, Elizabeth insisted that the neckline should be lower than originally planned. Helen Rose agreed, but added a transparent layer to preserve the elegance and modesty of the design. An internal corset defined her waist, while the silhouette extended into a majestic train. The silk tulle veil, held in place by a pearl-covered Juliet cap, completed the bridal fantasy. More than 15 people worked full-time for nearly 3 months to finish the gown, and before approximately 700 guests, Elizabeth appeared to be living the perfect ending of a Hollywood film. Decades later, the dress was sold at auction for £121,875. Before revealing first place, tell me, would you have chosen Elizabeth Taylor as the grand winner? And if you still have not subscribed, this is the perfect moment, because very soon we will continue with the most beautiful wedding dresses ever created for the screen. Number 1. Grace Kelly. In 1956, Grace Kelly lived a finale that Hollywood itself could never have written more beautifully. An Academy Award-winning star left the silver screen to become the Princess of Monaco. For the religious ceremony on April 19th, MGM presented her with a gown designed by Helen Rose and created in its Culver City workshops, according to sources, by a team of 35 people. The creation combined antique Brussels lace, tiny pearls, a high neckline, and long sleeves. A carefully pleated silk skirt flowed into an elegant train. Although the gown was constructed in 4 complex sections, its appearance remained serene, delicate, and effortless. Helen Rose chose a gentle shade of ivory to reflect Grace's personality, simple, feminine, elegant. Over her face, she placed a single layer of unembellished tulle, allowing Grace's beauty to remain clearly visible. Grace completed the look with a small bouquet of lilies of the valley and a missal decorated with matching silk, lace, and pearls. She was not only Hollywood's most beautiful bride. That morning, before the eyes of the world, a princess of cinema became a real princess. And so, we come to the end of this journey through 10 real-life weddings that seem like scenes from a movie. From the simplicity of Audrey Hepburn to the majesty of Grace Kelly, each gown reflected an era, a personality, and a different way of understanding elegance. Now, tell me in the comments, which dress would have taken first place in your ranking? If you enjoyed this journey through the glamour of classic cinema, give the video a like, share it, and subscribe to Gisela'sStyleRoyal to continue discovering the stories, the gowns, and the women who made elegance unforgettable. See you in the next video.